Good morning, friends. My name is Rahul Salunke, student of BCMA City. My today's topic is deadlock. Here is the overview of the content that I am going to explain in this presentation. The table of content are as follows. First, deadlock. Second, condition of deadlock. Third, advantages of deadlock. Fourth, disadvantages of deadlock and reference. What is deadlock? Deadlock is a situation that occurs in operating system when any process enters a waiting state because another process is holding the demanded resources. Deadlock is a common problem in multiprocessing where several processes share a specific type of mutually exclusive resources known as soft lock or software. In simple way, a set of two or more processes are deadlocked if they are blocked, that is, in the waiting state, each holding a resources and waiting to acquire a resource held by other process in a set. Consider an example when two trains are coming together towards each other on same track and there is only one track. None of the train are moving once they are in front of each other. Similar situation occur in operating system where when there are two or more processes hold same resources and wait for resource held by other. For example, in this diagram, in the given diagram, process 1 is holding resource 1 and waiting for resource 2, which is acquired by process 2, and the process 2 is waiting for resource 1. So this diagram is have a deadlock condition. Necessary condition for deadlock: mutual exclusion. There should be a resource that can only be held by one process at a time. For example, in the given diagram, there is a single instance of resource 1 and it is held by process 1 only. By this condition, there must exist at least one resource in a system which can be used by only one process at a time. If there exist no such resources, then deadlock will never occur. Printer is an example of resource that can be used by only one process at a time. Hold and wait. A process can hold multiple resources at and still require more resources from other processes which are holding them. In this given diagram, process 2 hold resource 2 and resource 3 is requesting the resource 1, which is held by process 1. By this condition, there must exist a process which holds some resources and wait for other resource held by other some process. No preemption. A resource cannot be preempted from a process by force. A process can only release a resource voluntarily. In the given diagram, process 2 cannot preempt resource 1 from process 1. It will only be released when process 1 relinquished involuntarily after its execution is completed. By this condition, once the resource has been allocated to the process, it cannot be preempted. It means resource cannot be snatched forcefully from one process and give to the other process. The process must release the resource voluntarily by itself. Circular wait. A process is waiting for the resource held by the second process. This is wait this is waiting for the resource held by the third process and so on. Till the last process is waiting for resources held by the first process. This form a circular chain. For example, in in the given diagram, process 1 is allocated resource 2 and it is requesting resource 1. Similarly, process 2 is allocated resource 1 and it is requesting resource 2. This forms a circular waiting loop. By this condition, all the process must wait for the resource in a circular manner, where at least where the last process waits for the resource held by the first process. Method of handling deadlock. There are three approaches to deal with the deadlock: deadlock prevention, deadlock avoidance, deadlock detection. Deadlock prevention. The strategy of deadlock prevention is to design the system in such a way that the possibility of deadlock is excluded. Indirect method prevent the appearance of one or of three necessary conditions in deadlock. That is mutual execution, exclusion, no preemption, and hold and wait. Direct method prevent the appearance of circular wait. Prevention techniques. This strategy involves design a system that violates one of the four necessary conditions required for the occurrence of deadlock. This ensures that the system remains free from the deadlock. The various conditions of deadlock occurs may be violated by as first mutual exclusion. To avoid this condition, all the system resources must be such that they can used in shareable mode. In a system, there are always some resources which are mutually exclusive by nature, so the condition cannot be violated. Hold and wait. This condition can be violated in the following way. Approach one. In this approach, a process can has to be first request for all the resources it requires for exclusive ex, ex, exclusion exclusion. Once it has acquired all the resources, it can start its execution. This approach ensures that the process does not hold some resource and wait for other resources. Drawbacks. The drawback of this approach is it is less efficient. It is not implementable since it is not possible to predict in advance which resource will occur during this execution. Approach 2. In this approach, a resource is allowed to acquire the resource in resource it desire at the current moment. After acquiring the resource, it starts its execution. Now, before making any new request, it has to compulsorily release all the resource that is held currently. This approach is effective, efficient, and implementable. Non-preemption. This condition can be violated by forceful preemption. Consider a process is holding some resource and request other resource that cannot be implementable immediately allocated to it. Then by forcefully preempting the current held resource, the condition can be violated. Or deadlock avoidance. This strategy involves maintaining a set of data using which a decision is made whether the entertain the new request or not. If entertaining the new request causes the system to move in an unsafe state, then it is discarded. This strategy requires that every process declares its maximum requirement of each resources they in the types in the beginning. The main challenge with that this approach is preceding the requirement of process before execution. Banker's algorithm is an example of deadlock avoidance strategy. Detection. This strategy involves waiting until a deadlock occurs. After deadlock occurs, the system state is recovered. The main challenge with this approach is detecting this deadlock. This situation works well for the process advantages of deadlock. This situation work well for processes which perform a single burst of activity, no preemption needed for deadlock. Convenient method when applied to resource whose state may be saved and restored easily. Feasible and enforced via compiled time check. Need no runtime compulsion since the problem is solved in the system design. Disadvantages of deadlock method. Delay process initiation. Process must know future resource need. Preempts more once than necessary. This allow incremental resource request inherent preemption losses. These are some references. Thank you.